Idaho. If you do any sort of fabrication or cleaning up of metal in your shop, well, eventually you'll want a blast cabinet. This one is an entry level, very inexpensive, but it is made to operate as well as any of the higher level cabinets. I bought it off of Craigslist, and it was partially assembled and some of the pieces were missing. And I don't really know what brand it is. This same cabinet is sold by a half a dozen different people, different companies. And so it could be a Princess Auto, a Harbor Freight, a Homac, a lot of different companies. But basically they're all the same. They probably come from the same factory. And as they are delivered, they're a fairly poor blast cabinet. Visibility is poor. It's hard to get parts inside. There's a problem with the suction system so that the sand delivery kind of surges. And they are, for most people, way too low to the ground. So one of the first modifications to make is to raise it up off the ground. And I did that by adding 4 or 5 inches to the front and some large wheels in the back. Everything in my shop is on wheels. That gives me a shelf on which to put my water trap and my vacuum in a bucket, both of which evacuate the dust out of the cabinet so that one can see, which is one of the other problems with this cabinet. I just ran some 1 1/4 inch PVC pipe up to the side of the cabinet when there was already a hole there. One of the other problems with the cabinet is that the lighting is poor. And this little door is the only way to get items into the cabinet. And when it's delivered, of course, this door has a bunch of holes in it which capture sand. And then as you open the door, it drops that sand on your shop floor. So inside my blast cabinet, you can see that I have the traditional Harbor Freight handle, which for all of the hype, it is actually pretty good. I have plumbed in another air hose to blow off things. This is handy for cleaning up parts before you take them out. It's handy for cleaning up the cabinet before you change media so that you don't mix glass beads, which is what I have in here now, with black oxide sand. One of the best modifications that I made is to allow the top to open. At the time when I bought this, I had a couple of motorcycle wheels that I wanted to get powder coated, and so I needed to be able to get big things into the blast cabinet. And so you can see now that the entire cabinet is open for putting big things in. We can get a better look at my air arrangement. I moved the air inlet to the left and plugged the right hand hole, and then I put a T in it. The main pressure to the handle is this line, and then this is my blow off hose. Originally, the suction tube, this is the thing that sticks down into the sand and allows the handle to suck sand up, was much longer than this, and I shortened it to the absolute minimum, and it worked pretty good. I put it in over here, tied it down to the side of the cabinet, and it actually worked pretty good. But I made another improvement that I'll talk about in a minute that's even better than this. I reduced the size of the screen so that bigger items had a little bit more headspace. So this distance here is vertical about 2.5 inches. These bars running across from left to right, there's 3 of them, are 1/8 inch by 3/4, and I just welded them onto the ends on each side, and that improves the support of the grate. The original support is a part that I took out and threw away, and so that allowed me to move the grate down. I have wired in some LEDs. I believe they're 18-inch LED strips from Walmart. I wired them in permanently with some wire clips, and then the wires go into a J box on the back, and then there's a wire that runs down to my light switch and plugs in. 2 switches and 2 outlets. The top switch is lights. The bottom switch is a vacuum cleaner and a media vibrator, which makes sure that all the media falls down to the bottom of the cabinet. This is a little less important now because of the metering system that I put on. But this was my solution to allowing the sand to fall down, or the glass beads or whatever. This is just a small muffin fan, 110 volts. And I merely carved off one of the fan blades, which makes it run out of balance and causes it to vibrate the cabinet, and therefore the media falls to the bottom very quickly, even in high humidity situations. As for airflow, I put a variable inlet size contraption on the back here. It's just a piece of plastic with a half circle cut in it. This is a drain stopper that I carved up and put 1 screw through, and that allows me to control the air coming into this plenum box. Some people say you need to plug this top part, but I believe having airflow directly over the viewing port is important. And so the airflow comes here, goes across the glass, and then goes into one of these 2 outlets. This is just a 1.25 inch corner piece, 3 identical inlets, and then that hooks to my 1.25 inch PVC on the outside. There's also airflow that comes down here and goes across the part and comes back up. And whether that's right or wrong, I have absolutely great visibility in here. Let me close the lid. And you can see how bright it is in here. I can literally see everything. One of the other changes I made is to make it easy to replace the glass. These screws are intended to go the other way around, but I put them in backwards so that this piece that holds the glass can easily come off. I intended to put wing nuts or something on there, but in the 4 years I've had this cabinet, I haven't seen the need to do it, since I have a electric screwdriver. Right now the gloves are pulled back so that I could show you the insides much more easily. The The top is actually very easy to do. I just put a piano hinge right along the back and used weather stripping to seal it. And then there's weather stripping underneath the top. And so when I raise it up, you can see that there's no weather stripping on the cabinet. The weather stripping is on the lid. I added a piece of 3/16 by 2 inch along each side to stiffen the top. Without this, it's kind of flexi flyer. This is very thin gauge metal, but as easy it is to do, it's one of the best modifications. It's so easy to open it up and put parts in. It allows me to get in bigger parts. I can get motorcycle wheels in and whatnot. Stuff that would not go through that door. One of the last modifications I should talk about is the siphon system. Like I said, the original siphon system used this siphon hose, or the siphon tube. It was one tube inside of the other with a little air gap in between. And so the sand comes in this end along with some air and along with some air there. And then this piece had hose that went to the blast gun. And like I said, I cut, I don't know, 6 or 8 inches off of this. I can't remember exactly. It was really long in the beginning. And that seemed to solve most of my problems. I had really good sand flow, not very much surging, and was basically happy with it until I became aware of an even better siphon system. And here is the last and maybe most important modification to a budget blast cabinet, and that is to change from a purely siphon system to a siphon with a metering valve. So this is the trap door on the bottom of the cabinet, and a hole will be drilled this size right here, so this can go through. And then when this piece is pushed into the T, it will capture the trapdoor, and the foam will make a seal. The T has a reducer and a cap so that the media can be changed. Originally I thought that wasn't necessary, but then when I thought about trying to use the trap door with all of this stuff hanging off of it plus a hose, I decided to go ahead and add a drain here. So the T and a coupler and another T with 1/2 inch threads on the small piece, that allows me to screw in a valve to induce air into the system and control that air. I'll probably cut off the water fitting part. And then we have another reducer that has a cone built into it, which is going to be nice for airflow and sand flow. It does have a little bit of a lip here, and I will smooth that into the cone. And then the last piece is a fitting that goes from pipe to 5/8 inch hose, and notice how square that edge is. So on the one that I'm going to use, I have already taken a large countersink tool in my drill press and built that into a cone, so there shouldn't be much restriction for the air and the sand mixture. The other fitting that I'm going to use is a 5/8 inch hose bulkhead connector. That'll make the entry into the sandblast cabinet very secure. I don't need to find an O-ring, and I don't have to worry about sand leaking out of it. So these pieces are all put together pretty easily with PVC glue. I decided not to use pipe because there's no pressure here, and there's only low velocity sand movement here, so I don't think I'll live long enough to wear a hole in the PVC. And so I decided to use PVC. It's cheaper, it's easier to construct with, and I'll show you the finished result on the cabinet. Allows the sand to fall out of the hopper into this 1 1/4 inch PVC tubing. That's a 1 1/4 inch T. Here is another 1 1/4 inch T with a 1/2 inch outlet here, and then we do a reducer, and then another reducer to 5/8 inch hose, and that hose goes up along the frame and goes into a bulkhead fitting, so I don't need to have a grommet or anything that might leak. And then on the inside, the original hose that came from the factory is hooked to the bulkhead connector, and I use that original hose. I put it in the center, and I put all of these hoses on the side because I'm right-handed, and this allows me very good access to the entire cabinet without any binding. And then my air hose is the same. I can blow off the part. I put a hook in here. I've used various nuts and bolts and washers and plugs to fill up the original holes for the electronics. And I've used a plug to fill up the original hole where the air was going to come in. That would be great if the user was a left-hander, but I'm not. And of course, all the seams have got this black 3/16 inch weather stripping. And the combination of having a negative air pressure inside the cabinet, which is what the vacuum cleaner provides, and I can control that air pressure, that vacuum in there with this adjustment here. And when you can really notice this is when you fire it up, why the gloves almost stand out straight because there's a vacuum inside here, which means that it doesn't leak sand. The air wants to go into the cabinet, not out. And so I've been using the same 40 pounds of glass bead and 40 pounds of black oxide for years. All I do is run it through a screen and clean the dirt and gunk and paint chips and whatnot out of it. I know that it will eventually wear out. The particles will get too small and they lose their edges, but so far it hasn't happened to me. At any rate, if you're looking for a blast cabinet, I'd look on Craigslist and or Facebook Marketplace or any place local. Like I said, I bought this one off of Craigslist. It wasn't put together, and I paid $50 for it. I bought a vacuum in a bucket and a few fittings, a couple of $9 LED lights, and a piano hinge and a little bit of weather stripping. So I don't have very much money in it. Certainly less than what you can buy the Harbor Freight vacuum cabinet or blast cabinet from, even with a coupon. So I've got a lot of cable hooked up to it. Like I said, everything in my shop has to have wheels because my shop is so small. And when I'm not using it, I just wind the extra cable up on this hook. Well, that's about all I can think of to tell you, other than it's one of my favorite tools now. It went from being very crappy to being nearly as good as a high-dollar cabinet. Its limitations are more a factor of my air compressor. I have a 5-horse, 30-gallon air compressor, and that's not enough air pressure and volume to run it full time for any length of time. I get a few minutes of blasting without the air compressor on, and then it comes on and runs continuously until I'm done. And that puts me down around 40-50 psi, which is fine. These cabinets are rated at 50 psi anyway, so it actually works pretty good. I've blasted motorcycle wheels, a lot of aluminum pieces that come off the mill, anything that I want to paint or powder coat. I've taken the paint off of a lot of stuff, and I just changed the media from glass beads, which I use for aluminum and copper and some of the softer materials, to black oxide for steel. And anyway, that's my blast cabinet. I hope this helps someone. Goodbye from Idaho. As usual, if you like or dislike my video, please select the appropriate button and let me know why. I really appreciate comments, and I will answer every one. If you're new to my videos, please select the subscribe and the notification bell to get more videos like this.